store. We've assembled some of the best Call of Duty players in the world to bring you the first ever competitive gameplay in Black Ops 3. We'll also get a first look at some of the big new esports features launching with the game on November 6th. And who better to talk to about that than the man himself, Mr. David Vonderhaar, Studio Design Director at Treyarch.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting for all of us to be here for sure. Tonight, we are going to see some very talented players from all over the world showcase the game live on PlayStation 4s. Thank you to Sony for all of your support. On top of the live gameplay, we get to share some of the new things that we have in the game on the esports front. Now, this is something that the team at Treyarch has been focused on for the last 3 years. So it's really cool for all of us to finally share all of it with you and the world.
All right, now before we get too far into the esports, as much as I'm really excited about it, let's kind of recap what the core innovations to multiplayer are.
So there's a lot going on in the game, as you guys all know. So we're obviously super excited that the fans get to play Black Ops 3 here in Cologne. But we all know, hopefully by now, about the new momentum-based movement system. That's the system that lets players fluidly thrust jump and wall run and swim and navigate through the world. There's also the specialist system. And the specialist system really challenges the way that players engage in combat in key points in the match. And you're going to see that, of course, featured here as well tonight.
Yeah, I think between the new movement system and the specialist, it really opens up like a really incredible strategic opportunity. So, you know, with that in mind, was the game kind of designed, or were those features really designed with esports in mind?
Yeah, so really since the start of the Black Ops series, we've been really looking at esports as this great opportunity, extremely fast-growing component of everything we do. The game modes like Hardpoint, the Codcaster, these are all now staples of Call of Duty and the competitive scene. We think the core movement system and the specialist are going to lead to some really great competitive play. But all of that's really just the beginning, as we will show you all of it today.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see it in the hands of the pros. These guys are so good. So, speaking of which, let's meet our casters who will be helping us MC tonight's matches. Thanks to the MLG for letting us borrow Maven and Mr. X.
All right, thanks, Scott and Vaughn. I am Maven, joined by Matthew, Mr. X Morello. But it's the esports reveal. How pumped are you?
We are beyond excited for this.
Yeah.
We both love Call of Duty esports. We travel all the events throughout the year, and this is what it's all about. I mean, Black Ops 3 esports, where it all kind of started with Black Ops 2, it's going to be massive.
It's incredible. I know we've been so excited. We've had a couple days here. The players have been playing a lot. Some of the stuff we've seen them do has been absolutely ridiculous. We've had some hands-on. I am so excited. There is so much more information, so many features to bring to you over the course of the next hour.
And the game just looks beautiful. I mean, as the players are playing it, the movement, like they were talking about, it's really fluid, really easy to get a hang of. It's going to be awesome to watch them play.
All right, well, speaking of those features, we've got Scott and Vaughn with the rundown.
Thanks, guys. Now, Vaughn, Treyarch has a long storied history with esports, with the introduction of codcasting tools, league play, and integrated streaming in Black Ops 2. How did you guys really kind of set out to top yourselves in Black Ops 3?
It's been a really amazing experience for all of us to watch the growth in competitive Call of Duty. I've said it before, but it's really important to say that until you watch competitive Call of Duty be played at the highest levels in an arena like this one, it's very hard to understand, and that's why it's important for us to showcase it. Starting with Black Ops 3, though, it was very important for us to really make sure we made the right choices about how to continue our investment that we've put into the growth. So our esports agenda innovates in a couple of really important ways. First, we really built league play and put it together and are calling it Arena, and it's made it a far more accessible experience, which we're going to tell you all about. We did a bottom-up evaluation of how game content is used competitively, and we want to make sure that that's a part of the experience, and you're going to see what that feature is all about. We've also spent a lot of time on the Codcaster feature itself. We need to make it easy to configure and set up. We have to provide some new tools for the casters to create the best broadcast package that they can for their viewers at home. Being able to spectate a Call of Duty competitive game is just as important to us as being able to play one, so that one's very important to me personally.
Awesome. Well, let's start with the weapons and gear. Obviously, that's integral to the competitive experience. These guys, they become accustomed to things, they get really into it. In years past, the competitive rule set was kind of defined by competitive organizations, by the developers, by the teams. But now with Black Ops 3, you're really kind of taking that and putting that power back in the hands of the players. Tell us about protects and bans.
So there's no doubt that this is the most significant change to how Call of Duty esports will be played over the coming years, and it's something that I'm really excited about. There's always this pretty large and sometimes contentious sort of idea about what should be restricted. What do you consider competitive? What do you consider anti-competitive? And how does all that work? But restricting game content actually takes the game and sort of pushes it further away from how the vast majority of people actually play the game, where they play with everything. So it's on us as developers to properly balance the game for sure. It's on all of us who are interested in esports to promote a real healthy ecosystem where the public game and the competitive game can be as similar to one another as possible. That's why right here, right now, on this show tonight, we are going to demonstrate the bans and protect system. So when you're playing in a competitive game in Arena or in a custom game, there's an entire metagame where players take turns deciding what piece of content they want to ban and what piece of content they want to protect. So before the game even starts, players are presented with a series of choices. Each player votes to ban or protect one piece of game content. Now, this is a very flexible system with a lot of custom configuration. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, we put all of the game content in the system. That's anything in Create a Class. That's all the score streaks. That's every specialist, weapon, or ability. That's hundreds of pieces of game content. So it's a whole new meta layer for the game, one that the players are in complete control of. This has the added benefit of truly demystifying that behind-the-scenes negotiation between players and leagues and developers that you were talking about. Now the players will decide, and those decisions will change moment to moment, game to game, and opponent to opponent.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because you mentioned specialists, which of course are new to Black Ops 3. They introduced a completely new class of weapons and abilities in the game, which can really, really shape a match. How do they fit into the competitive environment?
As we've talked about before, we like to say that the specialist weapons and abilities are designed to fit in that power band that exists between all of the content in Create a Class and the score streaks themselves. So it's absolutely true that specialist weapons and abilities are going to be extremely effective and very, very powerful in a competitive game situation. So, as an example, there is nothing quite like finding yourself in the right situational opportunity to activate Ruin's Overdrive for a clutch run with a satellite drone, slam dunking it right in for a game-winning score. Now, this makes picking the right specialist or ability at the right time for the right game mode all that much more critical to the game. So specialists work with the competitive agenda in a very important way that we call the specialist draft. Now, the specialist draft is when each player from each side can only have one specialist weapon or ability per team. So let me use an example. Let's say it's a pro game, it's 4-on-4, it's uplink. During the setup of that game, only one player can take Ruin Overdrive. The other 3 players on that team have to take a different weapon from the specialist or a different specialist ability.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the teams have to think very, very carefully about what they pick. And but more importantly, I think, from a kind of podcasting perspective, I think there's a lot more to discuss in terms of the metagame and doing that analysis, which begs a really important question, which is what Maven and Mr. X have to say about it. So what are your guys' thoughts?
All right, this is amazing. Matt, you were a former professional FPS player. I was semi-professional at best. But when you hear stuff like meta, balance, all these words, man, I'm getting so pumped. Or just think of the way this is going to diversify and make it such a more dynamic gameplay.
You get deeper into the bans and protects, right? A team that has a player like Clayster probably has to protect his dominant AR that he's really good with, or he has to get good with all the AR. So it adds so much more depth to the game than the way the specialists are used. A player like TP, maybe he goes for a more OBJ-minded specialist. And then, some of the best slayers in the game, they'll pick some of the weapon specialists and be able to use those to their advantage. So the game will change game to game, opponent to opponent.
Well, we saw just in the course of yesterday, really. Right. One player's going off big time with a specific rifle. Next thing you know, that gets banned next map. The course of, an esports season, the course of the game, the way to watch this stuff change is going to be absolutely amazing. But, we talked about the fact that we have competitive players here. We are, of course, going to be having some Black Ops 3 action. We've got Scott, main stage. We're going to have a live draft.
All right, so speaking of the players, I have the privilege of introducing